Welcome to another edition of Positive Vibes, making positivity and gratitude louder in a podcast world. And I'm just this week I made the announcement earlier on my Instagram and Facebook that I was not going to be my show was not going to be on Facebook Live this week, but the station manager walked in at the last minute and Christian helped me out, and here I am. So now it's going to be on my Facebook Live too, I guess. Um, yeah, just announcing that. Anyway, this week I am not going to be. My guest was unable to. We were unable to connect today at this time, so we both had the time the other day and recorded Zoom. We did a Zoom call and got that recorded. And so today I'm going to be playing that for you. And the call I was on a Zoom call with Justin Schenck, who is the founder and host of the Growth Now Movement podcast. And I don't know, I'd go on describing it, but yeah, he's just an amazing guy, and he's got an amazing podcast and does amazing stuff. So I'd go on describing give him an introduction, but I would just be repeating what's already in the video. So on that note, I will just play it for you. And here we go. All right. Well, welcome to Positive Vibes, making positivity and gratitude louder in a podcast world. And on this week's episode of Positive Vibes, I have Justin Schenck, the founder and host of the Growth Now Movement podcast. And he is the one who I got connected with on Instagram to begin with a couple years ago. And he introduced me to podcasting. And like right after I met him on Instagram, I started my podcast, and now it's morphed into me doing my podcast at the radio station. So yeah, here we go, an interview with Justin Schenck. Good afternoon, Justin, or good morning, whatever time it is there.
I know, right? So Shane, how are you, man? It's been quite the journey, man, and it's unbelievable that it was a couple years ago. How time flies, and here we are, man. I'm honored that you invited me on the show.
Yeah, it was actually, I was looking, it came up on my memories earlier, and it was like April something 2018.
Wow.
And I'm like, wow, was it that long ago? But I guess it was, if that's what Instagram says. But yeah, it's just like, you know, following you, watching your podcasts and everything. And then, of course, following Gary Vee and him saying, get into podcasting if you can, and use the Anchor app, which I started on. And now here I'm at the radio station, so I don't need the Anchor app anymore. But, soon I'm going to be getting back into that. But yeah, anyway, I'm just glad to have you on my show. And actually, you put up a post the other day saying something about um, people always people are always bugging you to get on yours podcast, and I'm like, it instantly clicked in my head something Gary Vee said about, hey, don't something about not worrying so much about getting value from people, but more giving value to people. And so I wanted to give you value and put you on my podcast.
Yeah, man, I'm honored, and obviously that's the approach that I teach my clients. I talk about that very often. Is to give without expectations, and that's really the hardest thing for most people. Is that they're always worried about themselves. They're worried about the next paycheck, the next opportunity, the next whatever. Instead of going, how can I add value to other people's lives? And the trick is, if you add value to other people's lives, those individuals or somebody inside this entire universe is going to go, how do I add value to this person's life or to your life in general? And that's really kind of been how I've been able to grow my podcast, how I've been able to make the connections I have, how I've been able to make the friends that I have. and so on and so forth. And so I approach every single potential relationship I have in my life with, let me know how I can support you. And that's how I've built everything, the podcast, the business, and everything else in between, man.
Yeah, right on, right on. Yeah, and getting back to the title of your podcast, the Growth Now movement. How did that come about, and what exactly does? I mean, I'm pretty sure I know, but just for everyone else, what exactly does the Growth Now movement podcast stand for, and where is it going?
Yeah, man. I think for me, it's been I've been podcasting for 4.5 years. I just passed 350 episodes, and for me, it's been a journey of growth, and it's the understanding that the destination doesn't really matter. What matters are making small incremental wins every single day towards whatever life you or destiny you want to leave behind, right, or legacy you want to leave behind, I should say. And when I look at the last 4.5 years and kind of where I am now, between the Inc. magazine listing me as a top 8 podcast to follow, I've been on, featured on Thrive Global, on some of the biggest podcasts in the world, and all these other things, I realize it's because the compound effect of me focusing on growing 1% every single day. We see these people we admire, the Gary V's of the world, Lewis Howes, all these people who have done big things in the world. We go, how do I get there? And then it seems so daunting a task, right? It seems so far away from where we are, that we almost give up before we even start. But if we can find a way to focus on today, making an impact today, growing 1% today, and how do I get closer to that big goal? That's all that matters. Because look, here's the thing, and I say this quite often: like, if your goal is to make $1 million in your life, great. I applaud you, and I hope that you do. But what I guarantee you is that once you get to that $1 million or that goal that you set for yourself, you're then going to go, okay, how do I make 10 million? The satisfaction is not in the goal. The satisfaction is in the journey, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I've really kind of focused on growing in what I consider the 4 pillars of my life. My business and financially is one of the pillars, relationships, wellness, and spirituality. And really, that's kind of the 4 pillars that my podcast is focused on over the last 4.5 years. And that's kind of what I teach clients now, is to focus on these 4 pillars in your life in order to sustain the life that you want. Number one, to sustain happiness, to keep stress low, and to fulfill your life with whatever it is you want to fulfill it with.
Yeah, right on. Well, yeah, it's like looking back, what was it, almost 4.5 years ago now. My book was published August 15th, 2016. I wrote and self-published my autobiography, and uh, it's like I was following Brendan Burchard, and he inspired me to write my own manifesto after reading the Motivation Manifesto. And so I wrote my autobiography, and I was gonna, be a big time author and, make $1 million and all that stuff. Well, maybe not 1 million, but I was gonna rise up out of the dish pit, and but that didn't happen, and I'm still in the dish pit. And but I mean, hey, it beats the garbage dump, I guess. But
No, right?
it's a lot cleaner job anyway. But it's like that didn't happen, and I'm so glad that didn't happen in a way, because it's like the journey, as you were talking about, the journey has just been phenomenal, amazing. The people I've met, people I've talked to, you included, um, it's like uh, getting to meet Gary Vee and him flying me to New York for the day to VaynerMedia. It's like, wow, just what a journey. But and it's just getting out there, and like we talked about earlier, giving value, not necessarily getting the value. Right now where I'm sitting now, it's like that $1 million is like, okay, so what would that really do? I would have the money to be able to spend the money, but then I would still be here. It's like, um,
Look, let me say this. Having money isn't a bad thing. It's actually a really
yeah,
good thing. And I encourage many people to fill their cup, right? But here's the thing. We have to make sure we're taking care of ourselves first, and then the rest we give. We come from a place of service, but we can't pour from an empty cup, right? And so
yeah,
what you need to do, if you feel like you're in the dish pit — by the way, I've never heard that term until this conversation — but if you feel like you're in the dish pit, I want you to sit down with a piece of paper and a pen and go, what can I do today to take one step closer to getting myself out of the place that I'm in, the dish pit or wherever, right? That's all you have to focus on. Because we get so consumed with this big, grandiose idea of what we want to become. Like you said, write the book, make millions of dollars, reach millions of people, whatever the goal was. Right, we get so consumed by that those incremental wins don't mean anything, and so we stay stagnant in where we are. So let's focus on that 1% step we can take today. The one step, that's it. And then you're going to, over time, you're going to see the compound effect of focusing on those small incremental wins. Now, do I win every day? No. There are days where I'm like, crap, I probably took 3 steps back, like because I didn't get that thing done. I yelled at my girlfriend because we got in an argument. I didn't return the phone call I was supposed to return. Whatever, right? I lost a client. Whatever the case may be. I don't win every day, but again, over time, the compound effect of the wins makes sure I win every single time. Me and David Meltzer had a great conversation about this on his podcast, and we talked about the compound effect of those small incremental wins. So again, I know that, and it's so hard to talk in broad terms, but to everybody listening right now, like, what's the one thing you can do right now to create one thing of momentum in the right direction today? And that's all you have to figure out. And then all of a sudden, a year from now, you're going to look back and go, holy crap, like that dish pit is far away from me right now. And I've made massive steps forward because of that. Look, there's 365 days in a year. So you can do the math maybe of how much you can grow in a year, and it becomes exponential over time.
Yeah. Well, the term that I used, in the dish pit, that's where I work, in the dish pit at the restaurant, washing dishes. But and it's like it, but that was what was on my mind as the next thing I was going to say was um, just doing a little bit, taking that one step every day, and that's what I do. Making my positivity post about positivity and gratitude every morning, and then I get out and go for my run every day. You know, almost coming up on 906 days anyway. Um, yeah, it's like just moving forward every day, taking one step, and building on that. It's like I read my book, and my book still hasn't really sold very many. I mean, compared to $1 million, but anyway, it's like um but it's like every day making that little step. I just got done running some Facebook ads, and little social media, and just taking that next step, and keep making my podcast, doing it consistently on a weekly basis now, you know, and it's just taking that, continue making steps every day.
Yeah, and that's all we can do, right? Like, I realized, it was funny. I look back at my life's journey, and at the age of 19, I was introduced to self development. Somebody handed me a book called "Who Moved My Cheese," and it's a book about the understanding that change is always going to happen around us, but that doesn't matter. What matters is how we react to that change. And that's kind of been my life's purpose, is to let people know, like, it doesn't matter where you come from, it doesn't matter where you are today. Um, what matters are the decisions you make today. But somebody handed me that book, and I became obsessed with reading self-development books, getting the knowledge, learning and learning and learning. And then I found myself at 30 years old. Now, keep in mind, this is 11 years later. And I was like, I've learned all these things. I can sound really inspirational, but I've done nothing. And it is exactly that. It's that daily, consistent action. Like, persistence and consistency, and overcoming adversity is going to create the success in your life. And over time, you're going to see it, right? Like, you're going to see those long-term wins. Like, let's talk about running. Obviously, you can run far. You've run 906 days in a row, which is insane. But you look at that and you go, think about where you were when you started, and think about where you are now, right? Like, I'm sure you can run much further, much easier, much faster. You don't lose your breath as easily. All of these things. But that's like everything else. Now, take that same action and put it into the business type of learning. Like, okay, cool. What's the one thing I can do in my business? Now, what's the one thing I can do in my relationships? Now, what's the one thing I can do on the spiritual side of things, so I can connect to a deeper self? all of these things become your actions, right? And so, like, one of the questions I ask on my podcast of all of my guests is, what's your definition of success, and what are 3 things you do every single day to ensure that success? And that's where I learned the high achievers have routines, not necessarily at the same time. I'm not talking about waking up at 4 a.m. and checking off check marks. I'm talking about, what are the things you do every day to serve yourself so you can serve the world. And what I ended up implementing into my life, there's actually 4 things I do every single day. One of the first things I do every day is I walk 3 miles with my girlfriend. So 3 miles to connect with her, to feel good, to move my body, to get it moving in the morning. That's one thing. Number 2, I read or listen to a podcast to learn something new every single day. I make sure that something new comes into my brain every single day. Number 3, a visualization practice that I've put into play, where I visualize where I'm going in my life. So I have a direction and understanding of who I want to be. And number 4, I reach out to somebody in my life every single day to check on them, to make sure they're okay, to make sure they're heading in the right direction, to see how I can help and support in some way, shape, or form. Now, the 4th one, a lot of people go, Justin, that's not serving yourself, that's helping somebody else. I go, but that fills my cup emotionally. When I help somebody else, I feel good. And that's why I reach out and check on them and see how they're doing. So those are the 4 things I've instilled, and doing all of those things serve my business. And so I realized that when I focus on those 4 things daily, money begins to chase me. Financial success begins to chase me. I don't chase money anymore. It just happens. And I know that sounds really cliche, but it's very real. And it's because I focused on the small incremental wins, doing those 4 things daily, serving others, understanding my business model, of course, but at the same time, like, just staying true to who I am daily has led to the success that I have now.
Right on. That's awesome. It all just culminates together. Yeah, it's like, that seems like a total paradox, You focus on these things that seem totally unrelated, and it's like yet it still just brings the business to you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's just like what I've found for myself in relation to service is, you know, once I once I you know I looked within myself, noticed what I had to change, started working on myself, after, like, I was just like you, focused, or got totally just dove into reading self development books, listening to speakers, reading their stuff, listening to podcasts, and it's like, but I didn't put it into practice.
Mm.
And so it's like, okay, what good does that all do? But once I did start putting it into practice and sharing what I had learned, and sharing the benefits that it had in my life, then I was able to maybe help and at least help inspire and motivate some people.
Sure.
And you know, I found that's where it's at for me, is, just sharing how it's helped my life, and, trying to help others. And yeah, it's just like, it just all comes together like that.
Yeah, and I think I had a coaching call this morning with some clients, and we talked about this. We talked about the importance of your story, and how does it imprint into the lives that you're trying to affect. Because here's the reality: your perfect client, or the perfect person you should be working with in a coaching sense, is you 5 years ago, and you're just giving the blueprint of the things that you've done over the last 5 years to create the life that you have now. And so, what's going to get that person from 5 years ago is your story. And I haven't really shared my story on this episode yet, but I'll give you kind of an insight. I jokingly say that if there was a senior superlative in high school for least likely to succeed, it would have been me. At one point, I had a 1.7 GPA. My mom was in the middle of a 20-year opioid addiction, and my dad was in jail. And so when you look at that, all signs pointed to, you've got no shot, kid. Like, there's no hope. And actually, the statistics say the same thing. They say if your parent's an addict, you have a 50% chance of being an addict. If your parent's in jail, you have a 50% chance of being in jail. Do the math. I'm 100% screwed. Like, that's just the reality of what happened in my life when you look at that, right? And so when I, when I kind of then looked into my life, it then became that necessary journey of me learning for 11 years. In 19, the self-development, hence why it struck so hard with me, because like I didn't really know what I wanted in my life at that age, but I did know what I didn't want. And so finding something else that gave me a direction was super important. And I always knew that I wanted to make an impact. I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I had 3 failed businesses along the way while I was working corporate jobs. And then I started the podcast. And the ultimate goal, the beginning goal for the podcast was I wanted to interview entrepreneurs and ask them business questions so I could learn from the best. So that way, when I start my 4th business, it wouldn't have failed. That was the first goal. I was like, I don't want to fail a 4th time, so let me learn. And 5 months before I launched the podcast, I got that phone call nobody wants to hear. It was my sister, and she said, the doctor says you need to come. And I drove down to South Jersey, and my mom was intubated in a hospital bed, and that was the day she lost her 20-year battle to opioids. And it was in that moment that it changed my perspective about life. It went from wanting the $1 million, wanting the recognition from others of my quote-unquote success, no matter where I came from, to, whoa, life is really short. Let me understand how to enjoy the journey, even when I'm in my rock bottom moment. And so my podcast became these conversations with incredible people like Ed Milet and Nick Santonastasso and Trent Shelton and all these incredible people that have been on my show, Dean Graziosi, not only their journey, but also about that rock bottom moment. And how did you create the life that you have now from that rock bottom moment? Because what people think is their rock bottom moment, they think is their end. But their rock bottom moment's the beginning. The rock bottom moment's the beginning of the story. That's where we begin. And then we work our way up. So I always say to people when they feel like they hit their rock bottom, congratulations, your story has now begun. And you start to formulate your life from there, because you look, my mom didn't die from opioids. She died because she didn't love herself, and she thought her rock bottom moment was her end. And so if I can inspire 1 or 2 people to understand that this is just the beginning, then I win every single day. And that's really what the process has become about, and the Growth Now movement and the story of my life and everything that I do now. And I get to speak all over this beautiful country before COVID about my story and about the things that I've been able to build in my life, and have gotten to connect with some of the most incredible people on the planet just because I was true to myself and I honored my story versus running from it. So knowing your story is very, very important, and that's what helps people connect to you. Right? As people are listening to this, they're probably like, who's this Justin guy? And then they just heard my story and they went, wow, this Justin guy is pretty impressive. And I'm not saying that to toot my own horn. That's really what happens in people's brains. The story is what connects people to what you're trying to do. And yeah, man, I think it's important for you to continue to share that story, not just write the book, but continue to share it through social media and the podcast and everything else in between.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you very much for sharing your story. I remember watching, there was a video a couple months ago or 3 months ago or something. There was a video on your I forget whether it was on YouTube or on your IG Live or IGTV, but anyway, there was a video, you were being interviewed on a guy's podcast, and you were telling your story there, and yeah, that really hit me hard, because yeah, it's like, I've been clean and sober 29, coming up on 29 years now, and it's
Awesome.
like,
Congrats.
thank you very much. It's like my story started when I hit rock bottom when I was 16 and a half, and it's just been uphill, or gradual uphill from there, and it just keeps getting better every day. But it's like sharing your, like you're sharing your story there, sharing my story, sharing my rock bottom. Maybe that'll help other people, and hopefully anyway. And maybe they won't have to hit a rock bottom, or maybe they can just see that there is a way up from their rock bottom. And that's the biggest, or a very, very big part of the journey is, connecting with other people. And that's what I wanted to do with writing my book. And now I'm finding with social media, I can reach a lot more people, and or potentially, and it's like, yeah.
So here's the thing. Let me share this with you too. We also, a lot of times, and I'm not saying you do this, but a lot of people do, they get caught up in how many followers they have.
Yeah.
They worry about, and I saw, I don't remember how, I know that I saw you on Gary V's thing, and then you started following me on Instagram, and I was like, I think that's the guy from the Gary V video. That's weird. And then we just connected from there, right? And so the thing is, we worry about how many people can we reach through social media versus reaching the people that we already have reached and making an impact in their life, right? My podcast does very well now, but for a long time it didn't. Like literally for the first year and a half, I'd have between 35 to 100 downloads an episode. But I showed up every single week and I delivered massive value every single week. And there's a moment when I was like, maybe this isn't going to take off. I should just shut it down. I was having all these thoughts, like a lot of people do, when they're like, oh, I've been so consistent on my social media for a month and nobody's showing up. Maybe I should just stop. And when I was thinking that with the podcast, somebody randomly reached out to me. They emailed me through iTunes email on there. And they said, Justin, I just wanted to thank you because of your podcast. I decided not to take my life. And it was in that moment where I go, even if one person is listening, I will show up. And I will show up because one person decides not to take their life, and there's a ripple effect on this planet that it will change forever. And so I know if I affect one person, I've changed the world forever. And I look at that as like my kind of thing right now. Now the podcast gets played in 100 countries every single week. And I feel blessed that that's happening. But when I talk on my podcast, when I interview people, it's for one person. And it's you. It's the person listening right now. Like that's the person I'm doing it for. And that's kind of been the power for me. Like, and so people ask me, Justin, how do I grow my audience? How do I grow my podcast? How do I do this? I go, serve the audience you have now. Find out what they want. If you serve them well enough, they're going to tell their friends about you. And when they tell their friends about you, they're going to tune in and they're going to love it. And they're going to tell their friends and they're going to tell their friends and they're going to tell their friends. Don't worry about hacking algorithms. Don't worry about doing this, that, and the other thing. Serve who's paying attention, and more people will find you. I promise you. It might not be the millions for the vanity people out there who want to hit that 1 million follower mark. But it's the people who are willing to go the distance with you. It's the people that are willing to hire you. It's the people that are willing to work with you. It's the people that want more from you versus just, there's people in the space who have millions of followers, and 1,000 of the people will buy something for them or go to their event or buy their book or whatever. That's just the reality. It's a vanity metric. So just go deep with your people. Pour into them, and you're going to win every single time. Promise.
Yeah, definitely. I just making my posts about positivity and gratitude every day, and making my posts about I have multiple sclerosis and I've had a traumatic brain injury. I was in a coma for a couple months, when I was a kid, and now I'm running every day, and I'm on a run streak. I do walk often, not often, but every now and again, and it's like that's just keep my streak alive. Even if I don't feel like running, I get out there and do something, like you were saying, do something every day. And it's like I've had, and it maybe not quite as deep as someone reaching out and saying, hey, thank you, I don't have to end my life now. But I've had a few people with chronic diseases, various chronic diseases, not just MS, but I've had them comment or reach out in a message to me saying, hey, thank you very much for posting about your run streak every day. I've been following you for a while now, seen that, and I've implemented in my life getting out and walking, at least getting out and walking, to the end of the block and back every day. And that just means so much, just to be able to reach people like that. And it, like you're saying, it's not about the numbers, it's about the depth.
Yeah. And that's it. And that's the impact that you want to make in the world. And I know that you're a heart-centered person who wants to get out there and make an impact. And and as things grow, like first it's that win, it's that victory of knowing, hey, people are paying attention. And then you start to build things for them, right? Like I run a mastermind. I'm going to be running a retreat in March for people who are looking to grow those 4 pillars in their life, which is actually more than already halfway sold out, which is mind blowing to me. Um, Hopefully the live event comes back, which we're shooting for September 2021. We can actually do a live event. I've got a virtual summit coming up in February or March. Haven't decided the dates yet, that are going to be free, just because I want to give value to people. I don't even want to charge for it, so people can come watch live for free. And so you start to go, how can I serve more people in different ways? Yeah, the podcast is cool, but how about I hang out with them online for a day and a half or a day? Why don't I do a live event and hang out with them for 2 days and get to hug them and high five them and get to hang out with the incredible speakers and have the after party and all the things that I do for my event. And so that's the things that happen after the impact. Like, you make the impact, and then you can create these amazing opportunities for those people to continue to level up. And like, that's really kind of been my thing. And I'm always looking for the next opportunity and the next thing of me being able to serve them. My event launched in 2019. It was a sold out event first year right here in my hometown of Reading, Pennsylvania, and I feel blessed that it was able to sell out. My goal was to double it in size year two. Then COVID hit, right? And that's a great opportunity to let people know, like, things are going to change around you. What matters is how you respond to that change. And so I ended up going virtual, adding a bonus virtual thing. I pushed the event to 2021, added a bonus virtual event, and it was great. Like, I had a couple hundred people bought, and then 150 people were there, active, engaged, loving. And like, I've seen virtual events where they have 1,000 people sign up and 30 people show up. And so it's like, okay, cool. Like, people wanted this, and I was able to engage with them and give them some takeaways for life and business and growth and marketing and all the things in between. And it was fantastic. And so the main thing is, first, find out who your audience is. Second, serve them. What do they want? What do they need? What more do they want from you? Like, let's take you for example, right? You had multiple sclerosis and a traumatic brain injury. That's probably and you have this incredible mindset in your life now, and you stay active, right? And so that's your audience that you're serving, are people who have dealt with traumatic injury in some way, shape, or form, people who have multiple sclerosis who are trying to overcome and live their best life. Well, how do they go from where they are to the mindset? So serve them. How do I go from this? How my mind is being damaged by multiple sclerosis, meaning I feel like I'm not enough. I feel like I can't get out and move. I feel like I can't do these things. Well, how can you inspire them to go do it? Create a challenge. Create a 5-day challenge for them where they have to sign up, and you guys do 5 things virtually together for 5 days, and it's free. And then you build that community that way, right? And then you go, how can I serve them even further? Like, they already love you after the 5 days. Cool. How can I serve you further? Hey, I got a mastermind for people who are looking to level up their mindset that have multiple sclerosis. So this is how it works, right? And so you create this tiered system of serving people, and the more people want of your time, the more you can create a business around it and make a greater impact. Because look, when people don't pay for something, the impact isn't great. So they have to have skin in the game. So start with challenges and grow from there. So hopefully people are listening, and they can kind of take that and implement that into what they're dealing with in life and say, cool, I can actually make that my business. I can create something around that. So that's what I would consider for you specifically. It's easier for me to do one-on-one coaching when I know what you're dealing with right now. But that's what I would recommend.
Yeah, right on. Thank you. That sounds awesome. Excellent. I'll have to delve into that and see what I can come up with around that. Yeah, it's just like getting. I remember a while back. Well, I say a while back. It was probably a year and a half ago, close to 2 years ago. But maybe it was like a few months ago. Anyway, I commented on one of your posts or sent you a message, and you were saying that I needed to be more consistent with my podcast. And that's one thing that I'm super, super grateful for, is this opportunity that I had back in April to bring my podcast to the radio station. It's an online radio station, but it's a radio station, and I have my own radio show now with my podcast. But it's a weekly commitment, and I need to be consistent with it. I mean, I took a little road trip. I was in Carson City, Nevada, and I was able to do it remote. I just hooked up on my Facebook Live. Christian, the guy at the station, he hooked it up there, and we connected, and I was on the radio doing it remote, sitting in front of the Nevada State History Museum. That was just like so awesome.
That
But
is cool.
it's just like being consistent all the time.
That's it. And it's funny. I say be consistent in podcasting. That's actually my number one tip to growing your audience. And the reason I say that is because I feel honored that anybody even listens to my show, let alone every single week, let alone the thousands and thousands and thousands of people that do, right? Like I'm over 2 million downloads across the board now, and it's just crazy. And so I feel honored that they want to show up. And I then become a part of their routine, right? I might be the podcast they listen to every Tuesday while they're working out of the gym or during their commute to work that day or whatever. And if I don't show up for them during that time, they're going to find something else to listen to. And my joke that I always say is, and the thing they listen to other than me is probably way better than me anyway. So they're going to go find another show to listen to, and they're not going to come back. And so because they give me their time, I want to make sure I give them my time. I'm going to respect them and everything that they do because I'm honored that they show up. And most people are like, yeah, whatever, I'll get it out when I get it out. And hopefully people listen and blah, blah, blah. That's just not the way to approach life in general. So why are you approaching your podcast that way? That's like saying, yeah, my wife slaved over dinner every night this week and I only showed up 3 times, even though I told her I'd be there every single night. See how well that marriage goes, right? Like you need to show up for the people that are willing to put in their time and effort for you. And that's just the reality of life. And so, yeah, consistency has always been key as far as growing the podcast. Like I said, I showed up consistently for a week and a half or for a year and a half before anybody even really was paying attention. And then slowly we started to grow. And as it grew, it really started to catch fire and spread. And I feel blessed.
Right on. Yeah, it's like I'm guilty as so far as not connecting with your podcast every week, but I do when I can.
Oh, thank you, man. No, and
I
look,
do.
I understand. It's a lot of time, and I know that very few people. I mean, if there are, I know that there are people out there that do listen every week religiously.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
know people that find me now 350 episodes in, and they go back and binge listen to the whole thing, which I feel blessed for that too. But the thing is this, I understand it's a time commitment. I just like, hey, if you like the guest that's on, you like the topic, tune in,
yeah.
and hopefully you take something that you can kind of put into your life and change your life a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. And that's like, I haven't, well, as of right now, my podcast since April, when I've been at the radio station, my podcasts are only on my Facebook Live and my YouTube. I download it from Facebook Live, upload it to my YouTube. And soon I'm going to figure out a way, now that I have a new laptop, figure out a way to what program I can use to get the sound out of there and put it through my Anchor, and then it will be on audio for people to listen to.
Right.
But and it's just like that. I want to put it on as many formats as I can.
Yeah. Just so you know, that's super easy to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
couple Google searches will get you there.
Right on, right on. That was my next step. I just haven't done it yet.
Yeah.
But and that's just it. So far as putting it on, reaching as many formats as possible would be possibly reaching more people, which would be, just that opportunity to help, be of service.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's what my podcast is about, making positivity and gratitude louder.
That's it, man. It's super important. But yeah, man, I've loved your journey, right? Like, and I know you feel like you haven't made the progress that you wanted to and everything, but your mindset is so strong and unwavering, right? And that's the key to being a champion. It's having that unwavering mindset of knowing why you're here, of knowing your purpose, of moving forward no matter the setback, no matter the things that we encounter. It's about moving forward. And that's something that you're doing, man. And you're doing it through the podcast. You're doing it through your daily actions. You're doing it through your journaling, all these things. If you continue to do it and find a way to serve that audience, then all of a sudden the money's going to flow, man. And I'm excited to see that happen next. And next time we talk, I want to know that some money's flowing into your life as well, because that's when everything really starts to change big time.
Yeah. All right. Well, cool. Thank you. Yeah, definitely. I'll, definitely work on taking the next steps toward that happening. so that you won't have to wait that long.
Yeah, hopefully we don't have to wait that long. Hopefully we're talking in 6 months from now, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, but even if it is a longer time than that, then that's just more of an awesome journey. Uh,
That's it, man.
yeah,
Hey, look, it's not, and look, I'm not. When we talk about my journey, I don't want to paint this pretty picture. Like even like things are super easy now. Like I still
yeah,
have the setbacks. Like you have
oh
to
yeah,
understand that like COVID came and completely had me shift my business. The live event went away. I lost 6 or 7 speaking engagements, paid speaking
mm,
engagements. Like things are still rocky, but it's about being operating at that higher level to say, okay, cool. Now how do I overcome this? How do I create the next thing in my life to impact lives and really fill my cup as much as I possibly can?
yeah. Right on, right on. Well, all right. Well, it looks like it's about that time. I'm gonna have to wrap this up here. Uh, but I just want to say thank you very much for coming on, and you have an amazing story, and I love what you've done with the Growth Now movement and the podcast, and thank you so very much for the tips and you know education, if you will, into podcasting, and I hope to grow my podcast. Uh, maybe not growth now, but growth over the next few months. And yeah, we'll say that Positive Vibes is now the growth over the next 6 months podcast. Ha!
Dude,
Psych.
I love it, man. I love it. Shane, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to have a chat with me. And hopefully somebody's paying attention and they heard 1 or 2 things that they really liked. And honestly, like if they liked everything that I've talked about or some of the things I talked about, I'd love it if they checked out my podcast in the meantime, the Growth Now Movement. Follow my journey over there. They just have to click the subscribe button on iTunes or Spotify or all the things, Pandora, iHeartRadio, wherever they listen to podcasts. Check mine out, man. But this conversation's been great. It's been great connecting with you again, and hopefully we'll talk soon.
Yeah, right on. All right, well, take care, and you have a great day, Justin.
Thanks, man.
All right, bye bye. And thank you very much for tuning in to this week's episode of Positive Vibes. And as always, stay kind, optimistic, and grateful, and have a phenomenal day and phenomenal week. Ciao. I'm out. And that was it. That was my Zoom call that I had with Justin Schenck the other day. Yeah, yeah, there was a uh, mix up or something at work, and anyway, I had the day off, and yeah, anyway, I had the day off, so we were able to connect right then since he had the time free, and we scheduled the call, got it done. So yeah. Anyway, it was just such an awesome experience to be on that call with Justin, and get that, like I said that there at the end of the call, get those tips and that education on podcasting from him, and it's that's the modern way of things, I guess, if you will, with those terms, technology and podcasting, media, social media, um, just getting on there and being consistent with it. Like I've stated to people in my life, when I'm talking about my podcast, it's helped me so much, just to be, having like making the requiring myself to do it on a weekly basis. Well, it's helped so much being here at the station. I have forced myself to, you know, fill my time slot every week, instead of, you know, having something else to do or whatever. And, I'll just play an old episode, and, I can't do that. I got to keep on the ball. And, It's just be consistent. That's been so helpful in, if I look at it, in pretty much every aspect of my life, just being consistent with everything. Otherwise it sort of falls by the wayside in place of new stuff. Uh, I don't know. Yeah, I guess that's where that goes. But yeah, it's just such a journey being on this, living this life, but being on this journey, um, since ever since I've been doing this here. Started my podcast on my phone a couple of years ago, and it's like having guests, calling guests on the using the app on my phone, and now it's like upgraded to having being on Zoom calls with them, and connecting on the audio and the video at the same time, and it's just amazing the benefits of technology and how we can connect with people all over the world like that. And going back to something Justin and I were talking about, connecting with the audience and being of service, helping people. The possibility of helping people is just goes back to being consistent. You never know who you're gonna if you're into doing a podcast or a show, you never know who you're gonna miss connecting with if you miss a show, or like, yeah, you know sort yeah, it's sort of like if I miss a show, then maybe possibility that the person who may have connected with my show that week and heard something they needed to hear to help them out, or whatever the case may be. What they may have heard on my show they won't hear, and they'll be watching some other show, and maybe they won't hear anything positive. Anyway, yeah, I'm trying to word that correctly, but it's not coming to mind. That's the best way I can word it right now. But at any rate, it's looking like it's about that time, and for me to wrap it up. So I'm just going to say I hope you enjoyed my recorded Zoom call this week, and with Justin Schenck. You can check him out at you can go to check out his page on Instagram. He's at Justin T. Schenck. That's Justin, the letter T, and then Schenck is Schenkck, and that's at Justin T. Schenck on Instagram. And I think it's at GNM Podcast on Instagram, also for the Growth Now Movement podcast. Or I forget the address, but I forget the site address, but yeah, you can just Google Growth Now Movement podcast. It's the easiest way to say it, and check out all the formats that it's available on. And as for that, I'm just going to say stay kind, optimistic, and grateful. And I hope you have a phenomenal day and a phenomenal week. Until next time, I'm out.
Ecos de la Comunidad. Ahora voy a estar sirviéndote a ti, pero también con más cobertura en BT Radio Universal. No se desconecte. Ecos de la Comunidad, en donde los lunes y los viernes de pronto vamos a estar aquí.